It's freezing in here.
Orla, did we get any mail from Lila today?
No, not today.
I really have enjoyed the stories that she's been sending. They've brought back lots of memories of bygone day. She wants me to write a book of my own, and if I could see better, I might try to do it. But I was never any good at penmanship. My writing always looked like chicken tracks.
Oh, Mom, that's no problem. I can scribble it down for you. You're a great storyteller. Come on, let's do it. It'll be fun.
Come on, Orla, that's too much work for you. You've got your own fish to fry.
Nonsense. We're stuck inside in the snow anyhow, and I've got a pencil and pad right here. We may as well give it a go.
Get up and go where?
No, I mean, let's write your book.
Well, if Grandma Moses can take up painting at her age, I ought to be able to talk. I've had 85 years of practice. Now, I know you were a school teacher, Orla, but if I should let some plain old hill country talk creep into my story, don't correct me. I used to be able to conjugate from A to Izzard, but right now I simply don't give a hoot. It's not correct grammar nor polite manners that determine the worth of a person. It's the love they have in their heart for others.
Now, Mom, don't start your book off by preaching a sermon.
Hush up, Orla. All I'm saying is that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, natural-born Ozarkian, and I'm proud of that fact. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, natural-born Ozarkian. I'm not an old mossy back. I know what's going on. I have lived through Reconstruction to the race for outer space, seen planes and cars and talked upon the phone. She's a dyed-in-the-wool, natural-born Ozarkian. She's not an old mossy back. She knows what's going on, and she has lived through Reconstruction to the race for outer space. She's seen planes and cars and talked upon the phone. The days of long ago are clear. The recent days are dim. The folks I've lost, they show up in my dreams. I keep up with the news, and Orla reads the morning paper. I love the True Detective magazines. She's a dyed-in-the-wool, natural-born Ozarkian. She's not an old mossy back. She knows what's going on, and she has lived through Reconstruction to the race for outer space. She's seen planes and cars and talked upon the phone. The Bible still comes first with me. It's been a source of comfort. I want to see my loved ones when I'm gone. Though most went on before, they'll be there at heaven's door and say, forgive the willful things she's done. She's a dyed-in-the-wool, natural-born Ozarkian. She's not an old mossy back. She knows what's going on, and she has lived through Reconstruction to the race for outer space. She's seen planes and cars and talked upon the phone. She has lived through Reconstruction to the race for outer space. She's seen planes and cars and talked upon the phone. All righty, here we go.
Well, how do you want to start? Do you think you should make an outline from your birth and childhood? Or do you want to start with your grandparents and tell how they came to the Ozarks?
Heck no, Orla. It's an old person's prerogative to ramble. I've always been as independent as a hog on ice, so I'll tell what I've got to say to suit myself. I'm not going to parade any family skeletons, so don't fret. But some things are best kept hidden in the closet. But what I do tell will be true, or at least the way I remember it. At present, I'm the oldest living person who was born in Ava. I've been around long enough that if anybody contradicts me, I can say, I was there before you were. Don't write that. No. Scratch that out. Scratch that out. Write this. I was born April 30th, 1873 in Ava, Missouri. I was the third child of Irvin and Mary Ann Yandel King. Mother was the mainstay of the family. I've often wondered how so tiny a body could do the work she did and bear the burden she bore. We loved her to the point of worship, and she did everything within her power to give us a happy childhood.
She had black eyes and tied her hair back in a nine gray knot.
Her eyes could be as merry as a child's or could flash sparks.
And if we misbehaved, she put a quietus on us.
And if we didn't mind her, she would thrash our cats and cuss. She had a lot of horse and she was thrifty and mature.
She managed business and was kind to everyone who knew her.
Yes, she was like an angel, caring, putting others first.
And if we misbehaved, she put a quietus on us.
And if we didn't mind her, she would thrash our cats and cuss.
Our mother, Mary Ann, she was as tiny as a tot. She had black eyes and tied her hair back in a nine gray knot. Her eyes could be as merry as a child that could flash sparks. And if we misbehaved, she put a quietus on us. And if we didn't mind her, she would thrash our cats and cuss.
She was like an angel taking care of us upon the earth.
Why don't you tell the folks how you got your name?
Eh?
I said, you ought to tell the folks how you got your name.
Does everybody have to know that?
Well, I think it's an interesting story.
It's been a pet gripe all my life. The young hired girl who stayed with Mother when I was born gave me the name of Jefferson. And Pa's brother gave me the name of Columbia. It's a perfectly good name, an honored name. But it's a man's name. Why couldn't my parents have found a pretty name for their first daughter? There wasn't any way to pretty up Columbia Jefferson. So everybody just called me Lum.
They could have called her Ada, or Beulah, or Eulalia. Had Adelaide's a pretty name, and so is Cordelia. The boys would court a girl whose name was Cora or Ophelia. But what did she get stuck with? They called her Lum. Oh, Columbia, the gem of the Ozarks, the gal with the funny sounding name. Her dad told his brother to name her. He called her Jefferson, so he's to blame. She would rather be Bella or Matilda. Bernadette or Camilla would have done. But her name was Columbia Jefferson, by gum. And so everybody called her Little Lum.
I'm ready to go when the master calls. Somehow I feel the spirit of the little mother who gave me birth will be there hovering over me. I've missed her since the day she died, but still I feel her near. I know she's waiting there for me in heaven when I die. Our mother was an angel, taking care of us down here. And she's fluffing up a cloud for me in paradise on high. She's fluffing up a cloud for me in paradise on high.
Now, come on, Mom, you're not going anywhere. At least not until we're done with this book we're working on.
Well, I shouldn't complain, I guess. Just like the old lady's cow, I'm in pretty good shape for the fix I'm in. Help me up, Orla. Blind as a bat, I can't see or squat, and my ligaments have come unstrung. But my mind is alert, and my spirit is well, and there's not a thing that's wrong with my tongue. I guess you could say, like the old lady's cow, I'm in pretty good shape for the fix I'm in.
I guess you could say, like the old lady's cow, she's in pretty good shape for the fix she's in.
Well, I've got the arthritis, neuritis, and angina. My teeth fell out before I lost my hair. I'm confined to stay in bed, but I'm okay in the head. I'm in pretty good shape for the fix I'm in.
She's in pretty good shape for the fix she's in.
Well, my ears are in a drawer, and my teeth are in a cup. My eyes are on the table until I wake up. Early in the morning, I read the obits. If my name isn't in 'em, I eat my grits.
If her name isn't in 'em, she eats her grits.
Well, my get up and go has done got up and went. My galloping days are pretty well spent. But I don't really mind, as I think with a grin about all the good places that my get up has been.
About all the good places that her get up has been. She's blind as a bat, she can't hear squat, and her ligaments have come unstrung. But her mind is alert, and her spirit is well, and there's not a thing that's wrong with her tongue. I guess you could say, like the old lady's cow, she's in pretty good shape for the fix she's in.
My hand's getting a cramp. Let's take a break on the book and we'll start back in the morning. Tonight you can be thinking of other memories for tomorrow. And then you preached a sermon to the young folk who still live here. You said, my generation built the biggest section of the town. Now it's up to you, young people.
do a little preaching, you know. Our scenic beauty could bring in lots of tourist dollars. We need more industry so young folks can find jobs. Speaking of jobs, girls today can't imagine the kind of lifestyle Grandma Yandel had.
Let me put your dishes away first, Mom. I'll be right back.
I think the woman who never saw rows of cellar shelves filled with fruits and vegetables that she canned herself, or has never made clothes for her family or sewed covers for them to keep warm, or has never created a piece of fancy work, well, I just think she's missed out on a lot of living. I carded, wove, spun, and quilted. I helped in the garden, washed, ironed, hand sewed, and fed my family. Despite all that, I lived to be 102 years old. So that just goes to show that hard work won't kill you. We didn't have any such thing as an 8-hour day or 40-hour week. There was no child welfare or old age assistance. We did for our own. Children had too many chores to do to become juvenile delinquents. Folks didn't have any how-to books. They learned by watching and by doing.
We didn't have psychiatrists or hospitals or pharmacies or fast food drive-in restaurants or even frozen dinners. Instead of banks, we hid our money under our mattresses.
Well, that's right. Remember after Grandpa died and some robbers broke in and Grandma got out and ran a mile to Uncle Sam's house?
The robbers heard Grandpa had a lot of money hidden under his mattress.
I was scared to stay at home after that, so I did a lot of visiting with my children. But the burden of my care fell on Mary Ann. Now, I know the young'uns thought of me as cantankerous, but it's hard to be pleasant when you're sick and 102 years old.
Now, I didn't mind taking care of Grandma, but I had stomach ulcers, and it wasn't always easy.
One time Lum went to Mother's and she was sitting down washing on an old-fashioned washboard, thinking to cheer her up. Lum said Mother the others would do the same if Mother lived near them.
I told her they're pretty blame sure to keep their distance. Grandma was a lot bigger than me, and she was hard to handle. One night, she hadn't been outside for many, many months, and one night while we were all asleep, in the dark, she decided she was going to go out to the outhouse in the snow. She woke me up screaming for help. She rears in the darkness without fears, headed for the outhouse. She slides down the high front steps, in the darkness out she slips, full of pep and full of zip, headed for the outhouse.
Halfway there before she falls, on the ice old Granny sprawls, shattering and freezing cold, headed for the outhouse. Mother thinks Grandma is dead. She drags out a feather bed, pulls the covers over her head, and runs to get some help fast. Neighbors hear her
As I recall, she never got a scratch or not even a little case of the sniffles.
Okay, Orla, where did we leave off?
You were talking about your brothers and sisters and their families.
I was thinking some more about them last night, and I remembered something funny that happened to my sister Lizzie.
Lizzie, pay attention. She's talking about you. I bet she's gonna say your name isn't any prettier than hers. She used to call you Lizzie the Lizard.
Hush up, he is not. She's talking about the time I swapped one of her dresses and wore it to see Amy Semple McPherson speaking at the Angelus Temple in healing service. It was black accordion, pleated crepe with a long, a long accordion pleated peplum in the front. But I kept fidgeting because it just didn't seem to fit just right. And I finally realized I had it on the hind side before.
Oh, good grief. What did you do?
I went to the bathroom and I turned it around.
The way she told about it would have tickled a cat to death. My sister Minnie Bell was black-headed and black-eyed with mother's features. She was the worst spoiled kid that ever wore hair, and I did every bit of it. I spoiled her until salt wouldn't save her.
That's the Lord's truth.
It was all Lum's fault. She just said so.
We spoiled Minnie so badly that by the time Eva came along, we'd had our fill of spoiled babies. Eva was a fat, roly-poly, good-natured little baby, and we let her stay that way.
You're the reason I didn't get spoiled.
That's right. Is your pencil good and sharp? I was a good-sized chunk of a kid before there was anything at Ava except one or two log stores, a little frame building they used for a courthouse, and of course, a saloon. Over 80 years ago, the street that runs in front of the funeral home was named Jefferson Street, after me.
Of course, everybody wasn't noble and hardworking. There were robbers and murderers and drunks, just like today. Why don't you tell about the town drunk?
Who? Oh, you must mean old Donnie Burns.
He's gone now, so he can't defend himself.
He probably never could even when he was alive.
Back in the early days, when livestock roamed the town, there were hog wallers all around the square. The houses sat on cornerstones, and dogs would crawl below, and fleas and chickens would bed down under there.
And fleas and chickens would bed down under there. When old Dante would get drunk, he'd sleep with the hogs beneath the local General Baptist Church. One night the hogs were squealing, and a man heard Dante say,
You're fair and well as I am, so shut.
"You're fair and well as I am, so shut Dante straggled over to a total stranger's house as they sat down to eat a sumptuous meal. Oh, Dante
name had a mysterious appeal.
That's a funny name, said Father Dante, eat a bite. Then Dante said,
Thank you. Believe I will.
turkey dressing, peas and rice, banana pudding jell. Dante sat and worked and chewed until he'd had his fill. Oh, Dante, eat a bite. He's sleeping with the hogs beneath a local General Baptist church. He started to bragging when he falls off the wagon.
I'm Dante in a bag. How about some lunch?
Well, I love to ride horses. I loved it when we'd make molasses from the cane patch and sop the pan with pumice stalks. I loved sledding down the hill at the Tompkins place in an old tub. But to this day, there's nothing better than I like than rambling through the fields and the woods and the streams. You're close to God and away from all the worries and the cares. In the spring, the countryside became a misty, tender green. And in the summer, everything became so lush and dark and clear. In the winter, the trees looked lonesome, all except for the cedar and the pine. But the prettiest time of all was in the autumn of the year.
There is nothing better I would like to see once again than the sky when it's blue with the Indian summer haze, and to ramble through the woods upon an October day with streets of gold when every fall the countryside's ablaze. The hills were covered over all with every kind of tree, with locust, beech, black gum, wild cherry, cedar trees and pines, white oak, red oak, post oak, blackjack, pine and hickory, elm trees, cottonwood, and lots of other kinds. All the sassafras, black gum, sumac, and elders turned bright red. Then the butternut and walnut trees and sycamore and maple, hickory turned to gold, and the woodland floor a bed of leaves of gold and russet, red and green, maroon and purple. There is nothing better I would like to see once again than the sky when it's blue with the Indian summer haze, and to ramble through the woods upon an October day with streets of gold when every fall the countryside's ablaze, with streets of gold when every fall the
woods were full of wild game. I never could cook a possum fit to eat, though. They all looked like they were grinning at me. In the spring, we'd get a bucket and pick dandelion, sourdock, narrowdock,
Sheep sorrel, lamb's quarter, and squareweed. Tongue grass, Dutchman's breeches, wild lettuce, poke.
And by the time they got tough, we had our greens. Mustard greens, turnip greens, spinach.
We used to sing a song about cornbread and buttermilk and good old turnip greens.
Oh, and don't forget the watercress and mushrooms.
You always picked toadstools.
Did not.
Too?
Did not.
She did.
Did not.
Oh, to take a fishing pole to Norfolk or White's Creek, there is nothing better I would like to do just once again. Or the Bryant River, Beaver River, troublesome Spring Creek, or the Rippy Hunter Cowskins, they weren't fished out then. There were fish of every size, and color, bass and trout and carp. There were red horse and big catfish. Don't forget about the perch. We all like to catch the eels, especially big bullfrogs.
Their legs jumped in, the friar didn't like them much.
Oh, to take a fishing pole to Norfolk or White's Creek, there is nothing better I would like to do just once again. Oh, the bright wind, the river, troublesome Spring Creek, or the Rippy Hunter Cowskins, they weren't fished out then. There is nothing better than to ramble through the woods.
As for spring, I could talk all day about the flowering trees and shrubs and vines.
Catawba, locust, persimmon, wild plum, wild cherry.
Sarvis, redbud, dogwood, flowering crabapple, witch hazel. Oh, and wild spirea, seven sisters, hawthorn. That's the state flower, you know.
Yes, we do know that. Wild rose, morning glories, moon vines, trumpet vines.
Bittersweet, ivy, grape, elders,
I
redbud.
said that one already. And what about the flowers?
I love them all, but the wild rose was one of my favorites. Mother loved flowers and always had them around her. I've always felt when you were taking care of flowers, you were pretty close to the heart of God.
The flowers and the shrubs line the old creek bank. Around the pond, sweet flag and cattails grew. Mother had some sage in a flower bed, and it rambled down the creek bank and took root there too. Johnny jump up violet, white top, blue with St. John's wort. Daisies, lady slippers, pansies, wild phlox, sweet, dandelions, goldenrod, aster, sweet pea, Queen Anne's lace anemone.
Johnny jump up violets, white top, bluets.
Johnny jump up violets, white top, blue with St. John's wort. Daisies, lady St. John's wort, daisies, ladies, slippers, pansies, wild ducks, kneesweed, dandelions, goldenrod, asters, sweet peas, Queen Anne's lace anemone, Queen Anne's lace anemones.
Are you through talking about flowers now?
Are you through swapping fish stories?
Hey, we were talking about hunting too.
What about the home remedies like goose grease, skunk oil, and sheep pill tea?
You know, some of those old remedies actually work. They were handed down by the Indians. Camphor, turpentine, quinine, calomel were in every house.
And all winter long, we wore a little bag of asafoetida tied around our necks to ward off the colds.
Oh, I think that stunk so bad the colds were afraid to come around.
I was thinking about that. And they gave folks whiskey for colds. They called them hot toddies. And if somebody got snake bit, they'd give them enough whiskey to make them drunk on the theory that one poison would counteract the other.
Do you remember when we broke out with the measles and Pa gave us whiskey to break us out?
I was slower to break out with the measles than the rest of the kids, and Pa gave me a double dose of whiskey. I got drunk as a hoot owl. I was so mad, I cried and cried. But I got my first and last chew and toot at a very early age.
And what about that Christmas program they had over at the Free Will Baptist Church?
You mean the one where Lum hid under the bench when Santa Claus tried to give her a candy cane and a kiss?
When I found out that Santa was really Uncle Whit, I almost had a conniption. I'm still salivating over that candy cane I didn't get to eat.
No, you ninny. I'm talking about when the church caught on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'll never forget that.
You know, Ma and Pa didn't go that night, but all us kids, we were there.
Jim got Lum and I got Lizzie. No, we didn't, we were busy climbing over shoulders dizzy, 'cause we couldn't see.
But the church organist that night, she played and sang the carols quiet and tried to rim the raging riot, but she did not succeed. Someone knocked a little mother carrying a baby over. She got on a horse to cover up her poor baby.
And then a lady took a shawl, smothered the fire, and that was all it took to save the burning hall. The night of the stampede.
Grandpa Mankin, my father-in-law, knew Jesse James and always made excuses for him, even though Grandpa was a Union soldier and Jesse James was a Southern sympathizer.
Well, I knew the James boys when they were operating around Joplin and Springfield. Why, I once saw Jesse James shoot a bounty hunter clear across the public square. You know, as I recall, Jesse's father was a preacher and helped start a religious college, William Jewell of Liberty, Missouri. And you know, Jesse liked to sing hymns and even taught at a singing school for a while. Well, then, back before the war, the railroad wanted a right-of-way straight through the Jameses' farm. And when the Jameses wouldn't give it to them, 10 Pinkerton men blew up the Jameses' farm, killing their one son Albert and blowing off Mrs. James's arm. No wonder he was bitter and defiant.
Jesse was out plowing one time when a band of Union soldiers came by. Now, he was only about 15, and that band of soldiers caught him and they beat him. So the James boys, they joined the Southern Army.
That's right. After the war, the governor of Missouri promised amnesty to Southern soldiers. So as Jesse was on his way to the schoolhouse to get amnesty, some Union soldiers shot and wounded him. Well, after that, the James boys, they turned outlaw. They robbed the banks, and they took special delight in robbing trains, and they were tormenting all them Pinkerton men. But you know, the history books would make them out to be outlaws of the deepest dye. But you know, Grandpa would say,
now, if you had fought for what you had believed in, had lost, and come back home tired and ready to settle down, only folks wouldn't let you do that, well, what would you have done? You know, as I recollect, there were a lot of songs written about Jesse James, and part of one that I remember goes like this. Living in Missouri was a bold, bad man, known from Virginia down to Birmingham, from Boston, Massachusetts, clear across the state, to Denver, Colorado, and the Golden Gate. Now the people will forget a lot of famous names, but every nook and corner knows of Jesse James. You see him in the paper in your home at night. The wind blows down the chimney and you shake with fright.
see him in the paper in your home at night. The wind blows down the chimney and you shake with fright.
My goodness, just telling about this brings back all those tales I heard as a child, and I can remember so vividly how scared I'd get. I'm getting goosebumps all over again. Ooh.
You said earlier that your pa didn't like it when the boys played games about the bushwhackers and bald knobbers.
That was a terrible story. Pa was 17 when the rebel bushwhackers attacked. His father and several relatives were killed trying to protect him in that raid. His stepmother died soon after, and that left him an orphan. Pa joined the Union Army while he was still just a boy. He became obsessed with the idea of getting even with those bushwhackers. The war never ended for Father. He was outspoken and short-tempered, but quick to help a neighbor in need. He wasn't afraid of anything or anybody.
Well, you know, feuding and fighting went on long after the Civil War had ended. In school, each family got to choose a history book depending on whether they were Northern or the Southern sympathizers. Well, people finally got sick and tired of them snipers hiding in the brush and decided to start a secret society out there called the Bald Knobbers to preserve the law and order. Well, the members met in secret, and they wore masks and they rode at night. And they held their meetings on high, treeless hills called the Bald Knobs.
As the country began to settle down, the organization was disbanded, except for a few bad seeds that actually liked the secrecy and the power to scare the bejesus out of folks. One night, Paul's aunt got sick, and it was his turn to sit up with her and give her medicine. And the girls had gone over to spend the night with Grandpa Yandel. And me and Jim, we were in the back room asleep.
A small band of masked ball knobbers rode up to our house, and they forced their way into our house. And they even came into our bedroom. I was so scared, I had to hold on to the bedpost. I was just so frightened.
The men demanded to know where Pa was because they had some trumped up grudge against him.
I refused to tell them where Irvin was. I thought I recognized one of the masked men, and I called him by name, and he ducked into the shadows. One man threatened to whip me. I dared him to try.
Mother was pregnant and never weighed more than 100 pounds, but she stood up to that band of ball knobbers and backed them down with her black eyes flashing wrath.
And after they couldn't find Irvin, they left, those low-down, ornery, no-account varmints. And then after they left, I lost the baby that I was carrying. I sent the boys to find help, and when Pa came, he was fit to be tied. He defied the ball knobbers in writing, and he stored ammunition and guns in our attic and fixed peepholes to shoot from. His friends formed volunteer units, and to guard the trails and to watch our homes. They never came back to our house anymore. In fact, I think most of them left the county.
Bushwhackers and ball knobbers, a scary, sorry clan. Cowards and terrorists together they would plan. Secrecy and subterfuge was their plan. No account varmints, down to a man. Ball knobbers rode out to our house one night, tried to scare our mother with all of their might. She flashed lightning eyes and gave them a fright. Didn't bother us no more, nor dared to try it. Bushwhackers, bushwhackers, knobbers, bushwhackers, knobbers, bushwhackers, bushwhackers, knobbers, bushwhackers.
talk about something more pleasant, like horses. We all rode horses. The boys were fine riders. Riding was the only way to get anywhere unless you walked. I rode anything and everything. The boys could get up to the block long enough for us to jump on, and they had some wild ones. That little Horty horse was a tough, wiry thing, and he'd try to get his bits in that teeth so you couldn't control him. Then he'd run away, but we rode him all the time.
I was a farmer, but also traded by wagon, hauled in practically everything the town bought. My freight wagons went to Springfield and sometimes to Rolla. The roads were just rutted trails, so the trips were long and tiresome. I kept hoping I'd meet up with the bushwhackers who had killed my father. I always wanted to give those murderers what for. Freighting was a good paying job. I could buy Mary Ann nice things like glass fruit jars to can in. I even bought her a sewing machine. For sport, we'd race our horses.
The race was usually between two horses. They'd be fighting and betting. Sometimes a man would even bet his farm and lose.
One decoration day, I had to stay at home and take care of a sick baby sister. The skies were gray and it started to spit snow, so the folks left early. I could hear them coming home. Pa and Uncle Whit were racing the wagons down the road that led from the cemetery to our house.
The thieves were running neck and neck along the dusty, rugged road. The women held on for dear life, a laughing fit to kill a toad. And as we stood and laid our lash, the wagons bounced and banged and dashed. As we were running neck and neck along the dusty, rugged road. Hi-yi, bandit, hardy, hi-yi-hi-ho. Hi-yi, bandit, hardy, hi-yi-hi-ho. We yelled each breath as field and farm all blurred by in a cloud of dust. And all along the wayside friend and foul all made a path for us. Old Hardy's neck stretched out a lead, his ears were back close to his head. Old Bandit gave him quite a run, and as we raced the chickens fled. Hi-yi, bandit, hardy, hi-yi-hi-ho. Hi-yi, bandit, hardy, hi-yi-hi-ho. Hi-yi, bandit, hardy, hi-yi-hi-ho. Hi-yi, bandit, hardy, hi-yi-hi-ho. Whit, do you remember the young man who used to wake us up at night singing while he rode home from his girlfriend's house?
One night we heard him coming, and we grabbed some sheets and some gunpowder and took off through the woods to head him off.
I scattered my gunpowder along the west side of the trail about a third of the way to the top of the hill.
I skipped a stretch of trail, and then I spread my gunpowder on the east side of the trail all the way to the top.
The singing rider passed me, and I set my gunpowder afire.
He set his horse afire in a race for home. But before he got to me, I set my gunpowder off. And there he was with a stretch of fire behind him and a stretch of fire in front of him and two fellers in sheets running after him.
When he got to his house, he was so scared he couldn't get off his horse. And his folks had to lift him down.
He told such a tale. we were scared to fess up and tell him it was just us pulling pranks.
One re, two re, Ickory Ann. Phillison, Follison, Nicholas John. Queevy, Quavy, English Navy. Sticklum, Stacklum, Buck.
One re, two re, Tickery Tevin, Allabone, Crackabone, 10 and 11.
Pim, Pam, Musty Dam, Twiddle 'em, Twaddle 'em, 21.
She said that's the way the Indians.
William Trimbletoe, he's a good fisherman. Catches hens, puts them in pens. Some lay eggs, some none. Mentry, Cuttlehorn, Apple Buck and Applethorn, Wire, Briar, Limberlock, 3 geese in a flock. One flew east and one flew west. One flew over the cuckoo's nest.
One flew over the cuckoo's nest.
William Trimbletoe.
William Trimbletoe.
He's a good fisherman.
He's a good fisherman.
Catches hens, puts them in pens.
Catches hens, puts them in pens.
Some lay eggs, some none.
Some lay eggs, some none.
Mentry, Cuttlehorn, Apple Buck and Applethorn.
Mentry, Cuttlehorn, Apple Buck and Applethorn. Wire, Briar, Limberlock, 3 geese in a flock. One flew east and one flew west. One flew over the cuckoo's nest. O-U-T spells out.
I sang all of Mother's songs and taught the rhymes and riddles to my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. I hope they teach them to the younger ones coming on.
We are dyed in the wool, natural born Ozarkians. We lived in the last half of the 19th century. We all helped to found our town and push our boundaries to the west, and we fought and worked to make our country free.
The days of long ago are clear. I like to think about them.